Welcome to Liesel's Artistic Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to draw these beautiful tiger lily flowers, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that today because next week I will show you how to paint these flowers and you definitely don't want to miss it. So let's get started. For supplies today, all you need is a piece of paper. Mine is cut to the size of 8 by 10, and if you're planning to paint with me next week, I recommend drawing your flowers on watercolor paper so it will be all ready to go. But if you just want to keep this as a lovely drawing, I recommend some nice thick cardstock. You will also need a pencil with a good eraser, and for an optional item, a fine point Sharpie marker. Now for my first step, I'm going to very super lightly draw some large oval shapes where I want my flowers to be placed. Now I'm drawing these really light so that I can easily erase them later. In fact, mine are probably so light you can't see them, so I apologize for that. But these are just for a guide. Then after I have the large ovals drawn, I'm going to add 2 small ovals in the center of the large ones to show where the center of my flowers will be. Again, draw these very lightly. And lastly, I'm going to add a couple of buds to my drawing. So I'm going to draw 2 more ovals, medium-sized, where I want my buds to be drawn. Now that we have a super simple guide for our drawing, let's get started with the centers of our flowers, or the stamen. So start inside that small center oval and draw some curved lines outward of varying lengths. Then go back to each of those lines and draw a parallel line to make it look more 3D. Then all you have to do is add some small ovals on the top. After the center of the first flower is complete, draw the stamen for the second flower in the same way. My second flower is going to be facing more downward, so I'm drawing mine in a downward facing angle. Now we're ready to start drawing the petals, and something to keep in mind is that tiger lily petals often curl under a bit. So each of my flowers will have 6 petals, 3 of which will slightly curve to one side and the other 3 will curve the opposite way. So with this first petal, start drawing it from that center oval again and make a curved line almost in the shape of the letter C, clear to the outer oval we drew previously. Then make a nice point to the petal and bring it back to the center, making the petal a little fatter in the middle and thinning it out again towards the center. Then if you want, you can add even more of a 3D effect by drawing a line like this to make it look like it's showing some of the underside of the petal. Now this next petal, I'm going to again start at the center of the flower, but I'm trying to draw the flower at sort of an angle. So this petal is going to be very fat at the top and go skinny at the bottom, curving slightly. If you look at it in terms of shapes, it's sort of heart-shaped. This top petal is going to be drawn so that it looks like it's curling under, but in a way so that we can't see the tip. So start at the center, draw up and out, making it fat at the top, and then coming back down thin at the bottom. This next petal is going to be fairly similar to the very first petal we drew. It's basically a mirror image of it. You may have to draw either around or through the stamen, and keep in mind that the majority of these petals' outer edges are staying fairly close to that large oval guide I drew at the very beginning. We only have 2 petals left, and these last 2 petals will be drawn fairly similar to each other. They will start at the center of the flower skinny, become fat in the middle, and have a nice point at the tip. They will also both be slightly curved in the same direction. When you're all done drawing your flower, you can erase your guidelines. Now we're ready for the second flower. We are basically going to draw this second flower the same way as we did the first flower, using a lot of the same shapes and curves. The biggest difference is that it's facing the opposite direction. Now that the flowers are done, let's draw the buds and stems. I already have my ovals drawn for where I want my buds to be, so let's start by drawing the stems. I have the top of the stem that connects to the bud slightly larger than the stem itself, and then all of my flowers are going to connect to one main stem. Now, as you draw your stem, it is going to get slightly larger the farther down you draw. So the very base of the stem will be the very thickest. Your stem is also going to be drawn behind the flowers themselves. So sometimes it can help to just draw the full stem straight through the petals, and then you can erase some of those spots later. And don't forget to draw a stem for the first flower that can connect to the main flower stem. Now for the buds themselves, they will be drawn in pretty much that same oval shape as your guide, but the tip can be a little thinner if you want, and it can also have a few small bumps right at the very end to represent separate petals. And then for a finishing touch, add a few lines to the bud shooting from the base as well as a few from the tip. It's finally time to add some grassy leaves shooting out from the base of the flower. I want mine to kind of curve out and circle around the flowers on either side. But I also want to make sure to have varying lengths of grasses to give some interest to my drawing. The basic shape for these leaves is going to be slightly similar to the petals in that I want the base to start out a little thinner, the middle of the grass to be thicker, and then have a fine point at the tip. For a bit of extra detail, you can add a vein on the grass. Now just repeat this process until you feel you have enough. And for one final finishing touch, add a few light veins on your flower petals. And also, tiger lilies have spots on their flower petals, so you should definitely put that in. You're going to want the spots to be the most concentrated the closer they are to the center of the flower. And then let the spots thin out and spread out until you get about halfway down the flower petal. Now, if you intend on just keeping this as a drawing or a coloring page, it might be fun to trace over it with a fine point Sharpie marker to make it darker and stand out a little more. Thanks for drawing with me today. I hope you had some fun. Please join me next week when I will teach you how to paint these beautiful flowers. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.